Ladies and gentlemen, please, would you regain your seat? And we will now get the big event going, the official induction ceremony for tonight. It is now my pleasure to hand over the podium to the chair of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. Please help me welcome John Baird.
Thank you very much, Pierre, and good evening, everyone. On behalf of the board of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame, I thank you for joining us at our 31st annual dinner and induction ceremony. Et un accueil chaleureux de la part du Temple de la renommée du secteur minier canadien à tous ici ce soir qui représentent la francophonie canadienne. Let me begin by thanking our talented Master of Ceremonies and Hall of Famer himself, Pierre Lassonde. I'm sure that most of you know Pierre is a fixture at our event, having served as our MC now 18 times. Pierre, thank you for your passion and your always entertaining monologues that kick off our dinners with laughter and sometimes with tears. I'd like to take a moment to recognize other members of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame who join us this evening. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here. You are the reason this organization exists and the very essence of what makes mining great. Members, please stand or wave when I read your name. Peter Bradshaw. Ross Beatty. Mark Rebagliati, Bert Wasmund, Graham Farquharson, Ron Nedolinsky, Jim Carter, Ed Thompson, Norman Keevil, Mac Watson, Ian Telfer, Rob McEwen, Terry McGibbon, and once again, Pierre Lassonde. Sadly, we lost two dear friends and members of the Hall of Fame this past year. Peter Monk, the business legend, really the transformative leader, and Bill James, the turnaround man, and what many of us consider to be the miner's miner. A loss of titans is an understatement. Their individual work and accomplishments outlive them both, and their lasting impact on Canada and the world will undoubtedly continue for generations to come. I would like us to please observe a brief moment of silence in the great memories of Bill James and Peter Monk. Thank you. Now, I would like to pause for a short video to say thank you to our platinum sponsors.
We would like to take this opportunity to thank this year's Platinum sponsors. Agnico Eagle, a senior Canadian gold mining company which has been producing precious metals since 1957. Barrick Gold, a global gold mining company and longtime supporter of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. Franco-Nevada Corp., a prominent Canadian royalty and streaming company. Magris Resources, a developer and operator of global mining assets. Odgers Berndsen, a leading executive search firm working with businesses across Canada, helping them develop their talent. Pear Tree Securities, the originator and leading provider of flow-through share funding in Canada. And Yamana Gold, a Canadian-based gold producer with operations in Canada and South America.
As chair of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame, I can sincerely tell you that this evening would not take place were it not for the support of these companies. So once again, another round of applause for them, please. Last year, you'll remember that we celebrated our 30th anniversary. We found new ways to embody just what we do as an organization. We recognize and celebrate individuals who have made our industry into the global leader that it is today. And we aim to inspire future generations in mining. We unveiled our new brand, which you're seeing tonight on these slides. We introduced a new trophy to give to our inductees. This trophy was generously donated by Syncrude Canada. You can see it on the slide that's shown now. The trophy's design represents the layers of the earth, and at its core lies the name of the recipient in recognition of their outstanding leadership and achievements. Before we pay tribute to our 5 inductees this evening, I would like to acknowledge our member organizations who make all this happen. The Northern Miner, the Canadian Institute of Mining, Metallurgy, and Petroleum, the Mining Association of Canada, and the Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada. These organizations exemplify what it means to be a leader in the Canadian mining industry. The late Mort Brown, former editor, I hear some applause for Mort Brown, rest his soul. Mort Brown, former editor and publisher of the Northern Miner, had the vision to bring these organizations together to sponsor the Hall of Fame with annual financial support so that we could do the important work of recognizing our industry leaders and celebrating Canada's global leadership as a mining nation. In later years, we won the support of our associate member organizations, and these are the Association for Mineral Exploration of BC and the Mining Associations of British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Ontario, and Quebec. But after 30 years of celebrating excellence in the Canadian mining industry, and with 30 more years ahead of us, some good things do have to come to an end. The Women's Association of the Mining Industry of Canada, better known to many of us as WAMIC, has contributed to our events for over 20 years, laying the foundation on which we have grown into who and what we are today. WAMIC provided assistance in organizing our annual induction dinners, and in return, the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame has made financial donations to WAMIC to support their mining-oriented charitable causes. This evening, we welcome several WAMIC members who were involved with our past dinners, and I would like to ask them all to stand or wave now and be recognized. I believe their table is over here. Thank you very much, WAMIC. Thank you for all that you have done. So as we bring to a close this partnership, I find it fitting that we open a new chapter in the history of our organization. Tonight, we will induct Kate Carmack into the Canadian Mining Hill of Fame. She will be our first Indigenous female member. For this, we are proud. There are only 2 women in the Mining Hall of Fame prior to Kate, and they are Viola McMillan and Kate Rice. If any of you know those 2 people, please give them applause because they were pioneers for the women. The demographics of the industry are such that many women who are now performing at high levels in the mining industry have yet to be considered for the Hall of Fame. It's simply because one of our criteria is that a person to be considered must be 65 or older. Fortunately for these women, they're not yet 65. Aspects of history are sometimes overlooked. Getting back to Kate now. The record-keeping and journalism in the Yukon at the time of the Klondike discovery tended to downplay the contributions of both Indigenous people and women. We are thankful to the Yukon Chamber of Mines, who, with the active participation of Indigenous communities from the Yukon, and particularly the youth of the Kwanlindun Nation, who I believe are sitting at this table before me, so I'd ask them to just rise and receive a round of applause for their work in bringing forth the nomination of Kate Carmack. It's wonderful to see young Aboriginal people reaching back into their history and helping us to correct some of the oversights that the rest of society has made in the past. So the information that was brought to the Hall of Fame by through the Yukon Chamber of Mines, coupled with this book. This book was written by an author called Deb Vanasse. You can see the cover on the screens. You know, the last important book about the Klondike that most Canadians know was Per Burton's book, written in published in 1972. Kate Carmack is mentioned briefly in 2 paragraphs of that book. 400-page book, Kate didn't score. This is a deeply researched biography of Kate, which shows how integral she was to the rest of those Yukon discoverers being at the right place in the right time. So I encourage you all, if you can, get a hold of this book and have a good read. You'll learn more than just Kate. You'll learn about the Yukon and all the wonderful things that went on up to the discovery. So, without further ado, I welcome our esteemed Master of Ceremonies back to the podium to get the ceremony underway. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. You know, our industry must do something right, because from some of the inductees that have been named, we have some people come like Mac Watson, who's getting on in age. I won't even say how old he is today, but the Red Cross informed me that within a few years they're going to retire his blood type. And that's probably just before they're going to use carbon dating on him. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, it's now time to get the show on the road, and our first inductee tonight is Kate Carmack, or Sha Tla in her traditional language. I hope I didn't mess it up, and I do my best. She is an integral part. You've heard of the story of the Klondike Discoverer, and she will be inducted, added to the Klondike Discoverer that were inducted in 1999. So please take a moment to listen to Kate's absolutely fascinating story.
Although no claims were ever registered in her name, Kate Carmack played a key role in the discovery of Klondike gold.
She was absolutely a catalyst and a mover and a shaker in this Klondike gold rush. I acknowledge my Auntie Kate Carmack and the role that she played in the supporting of all these men in history.
It's important to tell this story because Kate was not just overlooked in history, she was also miswritten into history where she was written in. If it wasn't for her, the Klondike discovery wouldn't have happened in the way that it did.
It was Kate's knowledge of the land that helped the prospectors survive.
There's no doubt in my mind that her skills and knowledge and connection to the fish, into the water, and to the mountains themselves certainly benefited George in their travels down the river.
Stories of Kate Carmack and the discovery of Klondike gold have been passed down through generations.
One story has it that they had gotten a moose and that they were taking a little break. And Skookum Jim went down to the creek to get some water, in which he found a sizable nugget in this creek.
When he dipped his pot in like that, he saw something shining in the water, so he picked it up and he brought it back and he showed it to George Carmack. And he said, "Look at this." He said, "What is it?" And George Carmack said, "That's what we're looking for." He said, "That's gold."
The events in Kate Carmack's life tell of the long, hard road that led to that discovery.
Kate Carmack was Tagish Tlingit from the area that's now called Carcross.
Kate Carmack, her Tlingit name was Shaw Claw.
She would have gone to spring camp, to fish camp, to fall camp. And so she was probably born over where the community of Tagish is now, in the Tagish Lakes area.
Back then, clan ways of knowing and clan laws sort of prepared the human for the hard life ahead of them, whether they were a man or a woman.
After losing her first husband and daughter to an epidemic, Kate found herself back home. It was there that she encountered George Carmack, who was living with her clan and had also lost his wife. In Kate's culture, no one was left alone.
No man or woman was left behind alone, and neither was George Carmack, in that he was gifted with a second wife, who was Kate Carmack.
That's what they used to do a long time ago. They didn't believe in widows or widowers, you know. They give you another husband, even if you don't know them. You just all of a sudden inherit a new mate.
Kate and George Carmack lived by working in trading posts and packing for people crossing the Chilkoot Trail.
Tlingit and Tagish women would pack up to 75 pounds over this really arduous trail, the 33 meanest miles on earth that's called the Chilkoot Trail.
Crossing the Chilkoot Trail, Kate would hunt small game and sew coats, mukluks, moccasins, and gloves.
I know for a fact that Kate's knowledge of this land and how to navigate it and survive in it certainly got George through some tough times.
In the early days, it took a long time to go from one place to another because everybody had to walk or they had to go by boat, you know.
She was doing the best that she could with what she had, with everything that she knew.
Family hadn't seen Kate or George for 2 years. They came to look for them around what is now Dawson City.
They stayed the summer and were planning to head back down this way to where Kate and Jim and Charlie and Patsy were from, but they ended up discovering gold instead, and that really changed the course of history in so many ways.
My grandma said that she heard that he had 16 people packing his gold and stuff out when they got out of there. That's a lot of people, eh? 16 people packing packs of gold.
Now rich, George traveled with Kate to his family in California. George went back to the Yukon, leaving Kate, but she found her way home to Carcross, living out her life with little money.
And she navigated her way back home, and that, I think, is a happy ending to her story, because in the end, although she was really instrumental in this discovery, her brother and her nephew did come into some wealth from the gold. She didn't, because she was written out of all that. George, her husband, kept everything in her lifetime, but she came home to her true wealth, which was her culture and her stories.
Echoes of Kate's character can still be heard through her story that is now being told.
I think she had to be quite a tenacious lady and full of courage, with a lot of strength and intuition. She would speak her mind because that's how she was raised. So I think that's important too, in the kind of the strength that she had. And yeah, that she's just a person I wish I would have known. She was a trailblazer, and I'm thankful that we're here clearing her trail and that she will be inducted into the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. It makes me feel so proud, and that a nation is acknowledging Shakla Gumishchish.
And here to present the award to Zena McLean, Kate's great-grandniece, is Louise Grondin, Senior Vice President at Agnico Eagle and a Director of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. Louise, would you please come to the podium?
Thank you, Pierre. It's both an honor and a great privilege to present this award in recognition of Kate Carmack, the first Indigenous woman to be inducted in the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. Kate's role in the Klondike discovery will live on in the records of this organization and in the collective memory of our proud industry. Thank you to Kate's great-grandniece, Zena, for accepting the award on Kate's behalf. Zena, please come up to the podium.
That is my daughter, Shawatke, and my cousin's daughter, Agay. I would like to recognize the First Nations who call this territory home, the Huron, the Haudenosaunee, and the Mississauga of Credit, and thank them for allowing us to be on this territory for this ceremony. Gunashish. Thank you, John Baird. Louise, my handler, Melissa, and the nomination committee, on behalf of Kate Carmack, I cannot tell you, it's such an honor, and I am truly delighted to be up here representing my ancestor, Kate. I also want to acknowledge the Daklaweti and the Deschaton families to which Kate belonged. John Baird once told the White Horse Star, you go into the history of the gold rush, you find it heavily centered on the men. Now we place Kate Carmack at the scene of the crime and have given her her due recognition. Kate Carmack's the Tlingit woman from Carcross, now joins only 2 other women in the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. She is making history as the first Indigenous woman to be inducted for the role she played in the discovery of gold on that fateful day of August 1896. Based on what we know who Kate was as a person, she would have been incredibly proud and humbled to be recognized as a mining icon, and then she would have gone back to work, building shelters, packing, picking berries, setting snares, and sewing. This First Nation woman was given the name Shatala at birth, which translates to mean older than old, and is bestowed on somebody who carried knowledge far beyond their years. As a young woman, along with her family, Kate was hired to carry supplies along the Chilkoot trading route, sometimes carrying loads up to 75 pounds for men looking to explore the Northern Territory. In latter years, as a married woman, she sold her mucklucks and mittens to support her husband's prospecting adventures. Her traditional knowledge and skills as a competent and efficient woman kept her family fed and alive while they picked their way along the creeks looking for gold. During the winter of 1896, one of the coldest on record, even the gold they had discovered could not heat a cabin or fill a stomach. Kate kept food on the table for her brother, her nephews, and her husband by hunting, setting snares, selling or sewing, and doing laundry for the other miners. It may have been while doing laundry, getting tea water, and washing up in the nearby creeks where Kate may have come across those first gold nuggets. My great-grandfather, Patsy Henderson, the nephew of Kate, was also at Rabbit Creek in 1896. He lectured on the gold rush and shared stories of those who were at discovery. One such story was of Kate's husband, we won't mention his name, musing, "My little wife Kate will make me a rich man someday by bringing me nuggets from all the gold she was found washing in her wash water. And man, did she ever clean up." In the spring of 1897 saw the claim of the newly minted Bonanza Creek netting $100,000 worth of gold in 6 months from discovery. The discovery of Bonanza Creek was a historical event for the world, for the Yukon, and for my family. My paternal grandfather, or my paternal great-grandfather, Tom Dixon, was a bodyguard for Skookum Jim Mason. Tom often remarked on the silent partners buried in the gold fields of the Klondike. And any of you placer miners out there, I think you know what I'm talking about. Kate was that silent partner, but not in that way. Kate wasn't silent in life. Opinionated, she spoke her mind. She viewed herself as equal to any man. It was the telling of the gold rush that made her a silent partner. Thanks to the efforts of Elaine Vance Duchesne, Susan Craig, Samson Hartland, Chief Andy Carville, Chief Doris Bill, Lancelot Burton, Deb Vinay's, and the youth of today's society, Kate is silent no more and can now claim her place in the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. I would like to ask Cheyenne Bradley, Paige Hopkins, Jeremy Linville, Ali Koda, Nishka Pajor, members of the youth of today's society to please rise and be recognized for their painting of Kate Carmack mural and the role they had played in Kate's acknowledgement as a discoverer of Klondike gold. Ganashish.
Thank you to the performers, Crystal McLean and Kluani Adamek, and to Louise and Zena for your remarks and true milestone to our industry. Our next video honors the life and work of Brian Meikle. Well, let's watch it.
I must say that throughout my entire career, I never met a quieter, more competent geologist than Brian.
He was very positive, always very optimistic and positive, which is important for an exploration geologist.
Brian was a modest person, but a super geologist with a fantastic record for developing mines.
Well, he had a doctorate in geology, and he just very, very keen geologically speaking. I didn't even know he had a doctorate in geology until years later, so it wasn't something he bragged about at all, but just a very, very nice person.
Brian Meikle wasn't one to seek the limelight, but his expertise in geology and contributions to the industry have brought him well-deserved recognition, starting with winning the Logan Gold Medal for the highest marks in geology at McGill University. Brian Meikle completed his master's and PhD in geology at McGill University in Montreal. He started his career as a secondary school teacher, but soon transitioned to exploration. Brian was instrumental in the discovery and exploration of 3 major projects, all of which produced operating mines. The first being the Camflo mine in Quebec, where he progressed from geologist to VP of operations.
I met Brian for the first time in the Camflo mine in 1980. In 1984, I became the mine manager, and Brian was the vice president of operation. He always kept in mind then we have to make some money with some profit. Those projects have to be profitable, and that was a good combination.
Brian's role as an employer pretty well mirrored his attitude towards life in general. You know what the job is, so do it as well as you can. Keep in touch, discuss problems, and everyone will be satisfied. When Barrick purchased Camflo in 1984, Brian was part of the deal. Brian then provided the geological input into the Barrick acquisition of the Mercer Gold Mine in Utah in 1985. And that gave Barrick its first experience with refractory ore. But it was his connection to the Goldstrike refractory gold property in Nevada that made a huge contribution to the growth of Barrick. Brian advocated strongly in 1986 that Barrick should pursue acquiring an interest in the Goldstrike property in order to do deeper drilling. Goldstrike was acquired for $68 million, a large amount at the time for a marginal property with refractory ore.
Goldstrike is one of the largest gold deposits in the world, and it was a company maker for Barrick Gold. And he was one of the people that got Barrick involved in Goldstrike mine in Nevada in the US.
Goldstrike went on to become the second largest gold producer in the world and the largest gold mine in North America, which has resulted in Barrick holding the distinction of being the leading gold mining company in the world for many years. The cash flows and profits from the Goldstrike complex were instrumental in allowing Barrick to grow from 3 mines and expand our exploration in 1993 to Latin America and China. It also allowed Barrick to continue growing by acquiring Lac Minerals in 1994, and the rest is known. To honor Brian's contribution to the company, Barrick named a mine after him. The Meikle Mine opened on September 21st, 1996.
One of the geologists, Eric Lawa, he spotted the hole and that discovered what turned out to be the Meikle Mine. And it's a phenomenal hole, and there's an intersection of 120 feet of over 4-ounce gold, so it was a spectacular ore body.
His knowledge of geology always impressed me. The work he did as geologist was so important. Because as a mining engineer, I believe that you have to understand the geology of what you are about to mine. It guides your decision to get the maximum ore recovery.
He was very good at encouraging teamwork and also encouraging geologists to be creative, and also he was a big supporter financially getting the money for the drilling programs that we were doing.
Brian was a key member of the group that built Barrick, allowing for billions of dollars to flow back to Canadian companies and their shareholders, who in turn have contributed greatly to Canada. Brian lived a rich and rewarding life and passed away at the age of 84, with Goldstrike and his Meikle Mine legacy still in operation today. Brian died in May of 2016, and the world became a lesser place. My old friend was a gentle person and a gentleman. He was retiring in a group, but always interested. He not only listened to people, but heard what was being said. He was warm in friendship, and his presence added a down-to-earth amiability and a truly droll sense of humor to any assembly.
And here to present the award to Janet Meikle is Lisa McDonald, Executive Director of the PDAC. Lisa, would you please come to the podium?
Brian Meikle is one of the most successful geologists of the modern era and holds several discoveries to his name. The best known, of course, is Goldstrike. This discovery propelled Barrick Gold to become the world's largest gold miner and generated an immense amount of wealth that has benefited Canadian companies, shareholders, and society at large. I am proud to present this award to Brian, accepted on his behalf by his wife, Janet Meikle. Janet, will you please come to the podium?
Mr. Lazon, Lisa McDonald, head table, inductees, and guests, good evening, everyone. I am honored to accept this nomination to the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame on behalf of my late husband, Brian Meikle. Brian and I had 58 memorable years together. I wish to thank Jay Hodgson for nominating Brian, Virginia Hefferman for submitting a nomination, and Adrian Sharp for compiling the video. This is a momentous occasion. Congratulations, inductees.
I said earlier that I was going to share a story about Brian Meikle, and I would say that I wouldn't be standing here tonight if it wasn't for Brian. I'll tell you why. After the gold strike discovery, the Franco-Nevada stock had gone from 65 cents to $17. And my partner and I, Seymour Schulich, we had decided that, well, why don't we sell Franco-Nevada and do it all over again? And we even created a new company called Euro-Nevada. And we hired a banker, and we were one day of signing the document for hiring the banker for the sale of this thing when I was invited to go up to the opening of the Barrick Holt McDermott mine. And so I showed up there, and you know, I had my gold helmet, and I smell of the nouveau riche, and strutting around like, you know, I had made it. And I mean, I was still young, and you know what. And I bumped into Brian, and I said, Brian, I said, you know, we're just gonna, you know, sell Franco-Nevada and, you know, do it all over again. And he looked at me, and, you know, like he just looked me right in the eyes and said, you don't know what you're talking about, do you? And I was like thinking internally, were you kidding? I'm going to put millions in my jeans and like I don't know what I'm talking about? He said, no. He said, this is not the discovery of a lifetime. This is the discovery of 3 lifetimes. And he just turned around and left me right there. And you know what? For the rest of the day, I could not take that out of my mind. For that evening, I could not sleep. And the next morning, I showed up at the office, and I said, you know what? I told Seymour the story, and I said, you know what, Seymour? He's 100% right. We will never have the chance to build a company with an asset like this ever in our lifetime. And that day, we fired the banker and made the decision to build Franco-Nevada. Thank you, Brian, for your golden words of wisdom. And we'd like now to take another moment to thank this evening's gold sponsors.
We would like to thank this year's gold sponsors: BMO Capital Markets, one of the largest diversified financial service providers in North America; Gold Corp, a leading gold producer with long-life, high-quality assets throughout North and South America; Penda Productions, a premier video and communications company and longtime partner of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame, who produced tonight's inductee videos; Syncrude Canada, one of the world's largest producers of synthetic crude oil from oil sands and the largest single-source producer in Canada; Teck Resources, a devoted supporter of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame, is Canada's largest diversified resource company, focused on exploring for, developing and acquiring world-class long-life assets in stable jurisdictions; Vale, a global mining company with headquarters in Brazil and leaders in the production of iron ore and the second-largest producer of nickel; Victoria Gold Corp, a leading gold exploration and development company concentrating on projects in the Yukon. Additional support for today's dinner has been provided by Natural Resources Canada, focused on the responsible development and use of Canada's natural resources and the competitiveness of Canada's natural resources products.
All right, thank you. We will now celebrate the career of Jim Franklin, so please roll the video.
James Franklin started life in North Bay virtually a child of the Canadian Shield, born on the same terrain that would one day contribute to his success as a geoscientist. Jim Franklin is an icon in the Canadian mining community. He was a pioneer of pre-Cambrian metallurgy in Canada, having spent much of his career documenting the complex evolution of the Canadian Shield and the link to its phenomenal mineral wealth. The exploration principles and techniques developed early in his career had a major impact on the subsequent discovery of significant mines, both in Canada and elsewhere. Jim's original career goals involved electrical engineering.
It was the age of Sputnik, and I thought this was a pretty cool thing to do. And I met a guy in residence who was a geologist and who spent his summers out on canoes and things, and sounded much more fun than sitting in an office wearing a tie, so I moved into geology and never regretted it.
After completing first-year geology at Laurentian University, Jim went on to obtain his bachelor's and master's degrees at Carleton University and a PhD from Western University. His thesis work took him to Thunder Bay to study regional metallurgy.
Ultimately, out of all of that, you learn useful things that explain the presence of ore deposits, and from that you derive new criteria that help you to find more deposits, not just there, but worldwide.
The Geological Survey of Canada supported Jim's master's and PhD thesis. Jim was then offered a job as Lakehead University's first professor of economic geology, where he stayed for 5 years.
He brings a lot of academic knowledge to the business and disseminates it to anybody who will listen. Jim can talk geology anywhere, anytime, to anyone. But what I think his biggest contribution is really this idea that he's been helped with the training of innumerable geologists who have gone out and done other things.
While in Thunder Bay, Jim consulted for Noranda and was instrumental in helping find a deposit in the Sturgeon Lake area. Following his tenure at Lakehead University, Jim was hired by the Geological Survey of Canada in Ottawa.
Quite frankly, they created the job of my dreams for me. Created a position called Regional Metallurgist for the Southern Canadian Shield, which was kind of the 007 of geology. I could do pretty much what I wanted.
He's a force of nature when it comes to geology.
His legacy is being able to transfer this in-depth knowledge of geoscience, in particular his knowledge of geochemistry, into and develop that knowledge into exploration criteria that is used worldwide by the industry.
Jim's career at the Geological Survey took him places few geologists go. He was asked to do research at the bottom of the ocean, looking for black smokers.
They'd only been discovered the year before. I'd heard about them, read about them, and said, yeah, sure, I'd love to do that, Mike, but I don't have a clue. And hello, it's Jim from North Bay, Ontario. Never been anything larger than a Zodiac on Lake Superior, but sure, I'd give it a go if anybody wanted me to go to sea.
That work led to an invitation to collaborate with the U.S. Geological Survey and other international organizations like the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
So few people have ever done that. Very few people have ever had the opportunity to dive up to 4,000 meters in the ocean floor and look at things, which I'd done, and to work on these high temperature vents for fundamentally 8 or 9 years. It was wonderful.
His work led to a discovery about 200 kilometers off the west coast of Canada in an area called Middle Valley.
And we realized that we had found something highly significant. And so, as it turns out, it was probably the largest mineral deposit ever discovered on the seafloor.
Jim was key to establishing the Federal Provincial Territorial Intergovernmental Geoscience Accord.
And Jim was key in that example of bringing two disparate groups together and actually developing an accord, which is the first accord signed by all the provinces of Canada, including Quebec. And so that was quite an accomplishment.
Since retiring in 1998 from his role as Chief Geoscientist for the GSC, Jim has continued his passion for learning and teaching.
The thing about Jim is, I think he thinks that he should be giving back to the business for all of the benefits that he's had. As a result, the industry in general is benefiting from that.
Jim has worked tirelessly for industry organizations and has been an adjunct professor with several universities. He also created a series of talks on Parliament Hill called Bacon and Eggheads, designed to help politicians and bureaucrats understand recent scientific findings. Following retirement, Jim created his own consulting company, Franklin Geosciences.
The last 20 years of consulting work have been a continuous surprise to me because first off I thought, who'd ever want to hire old Jim to do something?
More than 70 companies have sought Jim's expert guidance. He is currently on the board of several, including UR Energy, a uranium company with a project in Wyoming.
Well, he really is an advocate for the prospector and the junior mining company. I'd say he's had a large impact on the exploration companies, particularly the juniors.
And I will again welcome to the podium John Baird, Chair of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame, to present the award to Jim.
Thank you very much, Pierre. And it is because of Jim Franklin, a distinguished geoscientist, that we understand the complex evolution of the Great Canadian Shield and the link to its phenomenal wealth. The Canadian Shield unlocked so much opportunity for so many in this room, many in this Hall of Fame, and many Canadians from our past, our present, and our future. We, as a nation, are better and more prosperous for the knowledge that he has unlocked. So it's my great pleasure to welcome Jim to the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. Jim, please come to the podium.
Thank you, John and Pierre, for the kind introduction. I must say that being inducted into the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame is not something I ever imagined would happen to me, particularly I look over the list of inductees and realize that these are a group of great Canadians who've really made the Canadian mining industry the great giant that it is today. And I'm pleased to have contributed in a small way to this. I'm unfortunately going to actually have a formal presentation tonight because those of you who know me know that I tend to go on some. and my usual half-hour progress reports are just not good tonight because everyone will fall asleep. My success is entirely due to the people with whom I've worked over the last 50 years. There's no question of that. Work in research, teaching, and exploration. Without the exceptional insight of senior managers at the Geological Survey, I can name D.B. McLaren, Ray Price, and Chris Finlay, I might never have received the opportunity to expand my horizons and those to understand ore deposits throughout the Canadian Shield, and in particular to do the Marine Minerals Project, which, as was mentioned, was something that I must admit I never had the faintest idea I'd ever get involved in doing, but was an enormous opportunity. Innumerable mining companies have opened their doors to me over the years to allow me to tour mines, gave me data. That's one of the great things about the Canadian mining industry, that they in fact would do this really without ever any question whatsoever. And it would take me the next hour and a half to name all the companies that have helped me out over these last 50 years. There are three people that I want to acknowledge first in my little talk here. First is Stuart Roscoe. Stu's nephew Bill is here, and many of you know Bill, but Stu was my first boss at the Geological Survey of Canada. He challenged me to think carefully and observe carefully in the field, but to think even more carefully about what these observations would mean. There were many times when we visited a mine in northern Ontario, we'd be driving back to the motel, and Stu would say, well, what do you think of that? And being totally overconfident, I'd give him my analysis with a smug attitude that I knew everything, and then he'd spend the next half hour pointing out all the things I'd missed, and things that I hadn't observed correctly, and certainly what I had not interpreted properly. I vowed to do better the next day. Well, I'm still trying to do better, because you go on in life like that. Stu was very instrumental in defining my PhD thesis. The second person is Don Sangster, who unfortunately passed away a couple of weeks ago. Don mentored me as a graduate student, spent a considerable amount of time in the field with me during my PhD work, and when I rejoined the survey in '75, he was my first boss. He taught me the value of being able to identify key factors that explain the presence of mineralization, and ensured that I had a free rein to study the deposits in the Canadian Shields, focusing on specific areas first to make an actual contribution, and then trying to summarize this periodically in terms of the larger picture. I started out in Flin Flon Snow Lake and went on from there. Thirdly, I'd like to acknowledge Dick Hutchison, also a Canadian Mining Hall of Fame member and my PhD supervisor at the University of Western Ontario. I was Dick's first PhD student. He loved a good argument, and we had a lot of them, as any of the students who were there at the time would know. However, he could usually defeat me with some prescient observation in the field that I hadn't really made, and once again show that I wasn't quite correct in my analysis. And so I went on to, with the direction of Dick, to complete my thesis and guide me to my future career. As most of you know, Dick went on to have many, many excellent graduate students that he'd mentored and supervised at Western, and then later at Colorado School of Mines, and he's remembered fondly by all of us. I'd like to spend the rest of my time just talking a little bit about the major constituencies in which I have worked. First, the academic one. I learned during my 6-year academic career at Lakehead and my subsequent adjunct professorships that were mentioned earlier that the central role of universities is to teach geoscience in a well-rounded and complete manner. The quality of teaching at universities, I don't think, is given enough credit and evaluating professors for tenure and promotion, because it's actually hard to evaluate. Popularity is important amongst professors, but clarity of explanation and the ability to challenge students to apply what they have learned and to define what we don't know are important parts of university education. Professors who do this should be recognized more broadly. Secondly, universities are the only constituency where curiosity-based research can really be done. This is really, truly public good research and must be well publicly supported because it's the basis for everything else that we do. Without the work that is done at universities, we would be nowhere in terms of understanding the processes of mineralization. Without those people who have developed the seemingly esoteric isotopic approach or focused on the structure of minerals, solved the solubility problem, or done field aspects of geological units that may not even have direct relevance to ore deposits, are those which give us that underpinning science that allow us as mineral deposits geologists to build and continually refine our models. Secondly, government geological surveys tend to be the unacknowledged major contributors to the success of our industry. Canada has by far, I think, the very best set of geological surveys of any country in the world. Its provincial and territorial surveys produce a continual flow of new maps and attendant information that form the basis for all exploration work in Canada. And in the modern digital world, within a few months of completing a field project, the map and underpinning data are all available to us. My own experience here, I'd like to acknowledge just one little example of this. When I started the work at Sturgeon Lake that was mentioned, the area had been mapped quite recently, but prior to any of the discoveries, by Norm Trowell of the Ontario Geological Survey. And on Norm's maps were some observations that no one knew what to make of, but turned out to be so key that, in fact, should we have understood their value at the time, we could have found the Matabi deposit with nothing else, because it was within, in fact, 50 meters of his observations. And as we began to understand those, we began to realize how important they were.
That's the kind of thing that our provincial surveys do, and I urge you all to support them. Finally, I've spent 20 years as a consultant in the Canadian mining industry. I've worked with everything from the major companies to little two-person prospecting teams. I've noted that the most successful mining and exploration companies are those which maintain a keen interest and involvement, not just in supporting, but also in doing research related to understanding ore deposits' presence. I'll give you 2 examples. Both of these were successful, and they were so successful they no longer exist because they got bought out by bigger guys. Falconbridge, which was started by Thayer Lindsley, and Western Mining in Australia, where Roy Woodall provided excellent guidance for many, many years. Both of these made research a basic tenet of day-to-day work. Falconbridge, for example, heard of some madman in Detroit who had developed an electromagnetic method for finding ore deposits. Everyone else laughed and thought this was a ridiculous thing. But they employed Thomas Edison to come to Sudbury, and by golly, he found an anomaly that became, ultimately, the Falconbridge mine. Its spin-offs had enormous success throughout Noranda and many other districts. Western Mining, under Roy Woodall's stewardship, discovered the Cambalda Nickel Camp and Olympic Dam. Roy once told me that he expected every geologist in his organization to be a research geologist, and should they develop a problem, they were to follow up on that problem, get support for it, which he would readily supply from the company, go out to the universities as needed, and solve the problem. The message is simple. Companies that have the most open approach to their work and are most encouraging of supporting research are those which will be most successful. Canada, again, is a leader with both Camiro and, most recently, the Canadian Mining Innovation Council's Footprints project, which has given us new insights into the geological, geochemical, and geophysical ore district characteristic at all scales, and evaluated methods for gold, uranium, and porphyry copper methods. This is widely supported by the Canadian mining industry, and it is very much to our credit because there are few other countries or jurisdictions in the world where this has happened. In closing, it's obvious that these 3 constituencies are clearly interdependent in terms of their work and their contribution to the success of the Canadian mining industry. We have the best, most integrated approach to work that each of these provide, and that's why Canada is a world leader in finding mines. Finally, I want to acknowledge my wife Claire and daughter Meredith, who provided me with outstanding support, significant direction, and a lot of laughs. Claire and I have been married for 50 years, but she says it's only 25 because I've been away the other half. She's probably right. That's the story for most of us, and it's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much.
Don't forget your award. Now, you just heard someone who really, really knows what he's talking about. And how do I know that? I didn't understand a word. No, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. And now we will hear the story of Sandy Laird. Please watch the video.
A strong work ethic came early to Alexander Laird, or Sandy, as he's known to most. Born in Invermere, BC, he was helping on the family farm as young as 6 years old.
Dad was a logger, so he was out with his horses, horse logging all year, and particularly in the winter. Somebody else had to go and get the firewood and go and milk the cows and bring the cows in from the range every day and mend the fences and dig the ditches. And
Sandy originally believed his career involved working with horses.
Well, it started at 6 years old, and I was driving a team of horses when I was 10 and breaking my own horses when I was 12 or 13 and working for packers and guides and outfitters, packing horses when I was about 14, 15, 16.
A chance conversation with a dean from UBC created Sandy's interest in mining.
I think at about 16 years old, I worked at my first mine, which was not too far away up the road, about 7 or 8 miles. And it was a very small mine. It was 70 tons a day compared to the hundreds of thousands of tons a day now.
After working at several mines, Sandy went back to school. In 1957, he graduated from the University of British Columbia with a degree in mine engineering. That was the beginning of a successful career that spanned almost 60 years.
I think what Sandy brought to the industry was the value that good engineering, good understanding of operations does to make successful projects, both in terms of turning them into mines and running them. He represents a class of people who turn dreams into reality.
Sandy had a very holistic view. You know, he understood everything from exploration through feasibility to construction and on into operation, which really I think is reasonably rare.
Sandy had 5 jobs in his first 3 years out of school, including mapping with the Geological Survey of Canada. Moving a lot was part of his plan for ongoing learning.
I've even passed that on to the students that I mentor now. I said, make sure that you got a plan. Your plan doesn't have to be cast in concrete, but make sure that you're growing and learning and change at least every 3 years.
In 1960, Sandy joined Placer, which eventually became Placerdome. He spent 39 years with the company as he oversaw the development of approximately 18 mines on 3 different continents.
There was one period there where we had 5 mines under various stages of construction, from just finishing off to just starting, and that was in 3 parts of the world. So there was a lot of plane travel trying to keep on top of it. By that time, I was the Vice President of Project Development in Vancouver.
Sandy became basically Placer's go-to person when it was anything to do with mine development, anything from evaluation to construction. Sandy is an excellent engineer. He has a sharp mind. He also spent a lot of time in operations, so he understands what has to happen for a mine to work.
In addition to his technical expertise, it was Sandy's personality that gained him respect.
Sandy was always an incredibly pleasant guy to work with. His characteristics were very much helping others. He was always very happy to pass on what information he had.
That willingness to share information continued. He became the chair of an industry advisory committee to UBC and facilitated a course on open pit mining. He has also donated a great deal of money and one-on-one time to help students.
Spent a lot of time mentoring students, and it's well received. The students love having people who've got industry experience to actually talk to them about things they need to be thinking about if they want to have a career in the industry.
Sandy retired from Placerdome in 1999 at 65, but went on to create his own consulting firm and then become advisor to Quadra Mining.
Or 2015, I pulled my last check, so I was 78 or 79 years old at that point.
It's Sandy's ability to operate in rough terrain, navigate intense political climates, and care for local communities that have influenced the way the world sees Canadian mining companies. His track record of building great mines around the world is one of the reasons Canadian mining companies are so highly regarded to this day.
He is one of the reasons why the Canadian mining industry has such a good reputation around the world.
He's contributed so much to the industry and its global recognition for Canada as mining excellence. We're best in class for a reason, worldwide, and Sandy is part of that reason.
And here to present the award to Sandy is Chris Twigg. No. Twigg will do. Okay, fine. Thank you. All right, here you go, Chris.
It's my great honor and privilege tonight to present this award to Sandy Laird. Sandy, throughout his career, has shown amazing leadership, management, and technical skills. As one of a key group of unsung heroes in our business, those that successfully engineer, build, and operate major mines and plants. Plants constructed and operated in many places that many in this room will never have heard of and probably never want to go to. done on time and on budget, in an era and in locations with no email, no cell phones, no faxes, sometimes no phones, and sometimes even no snail mail. Amazing accomplishments, and that helped build Plaza to be the incredible powerhouse that it was. I'm very proud to present this award to Sandy and to welcome him into the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. Sandy, will you please come up to the podium to receive your award?
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, Pierre. Good evening to the board and members of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame, and especially to all of you who are attending this ceremony tonight. I would like to thank everyone who made my induction into the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame possible, particularly the members of CIM who put my name forward, the selection committee, and all the people who wrote letters of support. I'm very touched and I'm most appreciative. I spent much time trying to answer the question, why me? Was it because I was successful? And if so, what made me successful? We all know that integrity, hard work, and pure luck contribute to success, but there is so much more. Looking back at my 60 years in the mining industry, I realize that every success that I have achieved can be traced to someone who helped me to make the right choices. So I would like to take a minute to consider how mentoring impacted me. I was introduced to the mineral industry as a 16-year-old farm boy, working as a crusher operator in a 70-ton-per-day concentrator. This came about with the help of a young mining engineer that I had met, and he became my first mentor. During that same year, I met two professors of geology, and they convinced me to enroll at UBC. They also introduced me to the company they were working for, and that opened the door to the next 5 summers working in exploration and underground mining, all of which exposed me to a great deal of mentoring. Then when I graduated from UBC, jobs were impossible to find. But my previous employers found work for me in mining and exploration and continued to mentor me over the next 3 years. Fortunately, before I left UBC, I was interviewed by Doug Little, a vice president of placer development. Doug had no job for me, but he took the time to give me some good advice. And 4 years later, Doug's advice paid off. I was unemployed, but Doug tracked me down and offered me a position at the Craigmont mine where construction had just started. This launched me on my 39-year career with placer. During all my years with placer, there was always someone who was planning my future, expanding my experience, presenting me with new challenges, and coaching and mentoring me to succeed. I believe that the mentoring that I received over my lifetime was the major reason for my success. But there was also another reason for my success. I was always surrounded by teams of excellent people whose skill and ability was unsurpassed, who supported and mentored me and mentored one another, and who were motivated to work as a team, wherever they were located in the world. And I was always made to feel part of that team. The point I am making, ladies and gentlemen, is that I didn't arrive at this podium by myself. I am the product of the mentoring and support of hundreds of people throughout my career. Without their intervention, I would not be here tonight. And since there was no way to pay them all back, I have done what I can to help young mining engineers in a similar way. And this led me to a 20-year association with the Norman B. Keevil Institute of Mining Engineering at UBC. And I thank Dr. Scoble, who is here tonight, for making that opportunity possible. I would now like to acknowledge some associates who have joined me at my table tonight and who represent the many people of different disciplines who have supported me during my career. Peter Bradshaw, from the exploration side of the industry, Bill McCatton, operations and corporate, Alf Hills from project development and operations, and from our collaboration at UBC, and Don Worth, who I've known for 55 years and who mentored me to succeed him as president of CIM in 1997. Gentlemen, I am most grateful for your friendship and your support. As all of you know, none of this would have been possible without the support of my late wife, Betty, who, with our 2 sons, followed me around the world as I pursued my career. Nor could I have done it without Margaret, my executive assistant for 15 years, and who later became my wife. Now our roles are reversed. Margaret is management and I'm the assistant. And of course, Margaret is at my table as well. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for giving me this opportunity to reflect upon my career and to acknowledge the many, many supporters who have helped me on my journey. A journey that experienced 60 years of change, from my first mine at 70 tons a day to my last mine at 120,000 tons per day. It was a great, great ride, and I wish I could do it all over again. Thank you. It's an honor to be here this evening.
That's terrific. Don't we all want to do it all over again? Yep, I'd sign up for that in a minute. But time goes by, and we have one last inductee, Jim Gill, and let's hear how much gall this man has. Please roll the video.
James Gill grew up in Montreal, the son of a civil engineer and grandson of a geology professor.
Because of my exposure to the geological side of it, it was interesting to me, and my grandfather had a pretty good life, so I thought, well, I guess I'll give geology a try.
After graduating with bachelor's and master's degrees from McGill University, Jim obtained a PhD from Carleton University. His first jobs as an economic geologist were for companies like Texas Gulf, Getty Mines, and Denison Mines.
At Denison, I got a lot of exposure to how to do deals, and I think that helped me a lot when I decided to try to do it for myself.
He's probably the most well-rounded CEO that I've ever worked with. You know, Jim understood all facets of the mining business. Geology, of course, mining, finance, capital markets. He was also an entrepreneur.
It was that unique set of skills that allowed Jim Gill to go from economic geologist to CEO of a $4 billion company.
I guess I had a bit of an entrepreneurial bent, and I wanted to try to see if I could do it on my own. In 1981, I made that decision. It took a while to get everything going, but I've never regretted it for a minute, that's for sure.
The first step was raising the initial $250,000 to get started. That's when Jim approached Leo Thibodeau.
And I was hoping that I'd be able to convince him to put $25,000 in to get me started. We had lunch, and at the end of the lunch, he said, well, I'm going to put in $250,000. So I thought, whoa, well, this is calling my bluff, isn't it? Now I'm going to have to do this because I said I was going to, and now I'm going to have the money.
John Jodrey became the other initial investor, and OR Resources was born. Jim started by making a deal with Brominco, which had land holdings in the Val-d'Or gold camp. They found several deposits and created 2 mines, Norlartic and Kearns.
And this is a picture of Howard and I and Len O'Gorman, who was our mine manager, with the first gold bar from the Kearns mine back in 1988. Big day for us, first production.
But there was a deal with Quebec's provincially owned SOCHEM that led to a major deposit.
It became really exciting for OR when in 1989 they found the Louvecoeur massive sulfide deposit, which was quite a major copper zinc deposit. It was one of the biggest copper zinc deposits found in Canada since about 1963 or so, when Kidd Creek was found.
Mineral resources for the Louvecoeur project were estimated in 1991 to be 30 million tons, with a copper grade of 4.3% and a zinc grade of 2.1%. The capital cost to develop the mine and construct a 4,000 ton per day mill was $300 million. Production commenced early in 1995. It was the largest new mining project in northwestern Quebec in many years. Jim says OR Resources' success was built one project at a time.
I think we were particularly disciplined. We never tried to get carried away and develop 3 or 4 different things at one time. We'd find something, we'd borrow the money, we'd develop it, we'd pay it off. Then we'd get the next one.
Those projects included the Andacoya and Quebrada Blanca mines in Chile and Duck Pond in Newfoundland.
We got all our money back from Andacoya in about 2 years, and we were suddenly sitting there with 2 cash-flowing mines, plus our gold mines. So we had to look for something else, and we ended up at the end of the day purchasing Quebrada Blanca from Cominco and Teck.
The opportunity to make a deal with Thunderman Resources for Duck Pond came just as the Louvecoeur mine was closing.
We were able to take a lot of the equipment from Louvecoeur down to Newfoundland Labrador for the Duck Pond mine, and Jim and his team got that nicely into production in 2007.
Jim's multidisciplinary expertise and business acumen have made him a leader in the industry.
OR was probably the most successful company in using flow-through financing, and really was a catalyst for other companies being able to utilize that type of financing, which was very popular at the time.
It was his personality, as much as his know-how, that made Jim a success.
Attracts good people because of the way he treats people, and he had excellent staff and was able to staff his companies up, operators and miners that knew how to do the mining.
In 2007, Teck, who had participated with Jim on other ventures, decided to make an offer to purchase OR Resources for $4.1 billion.
I think that it was probably the fastest deal ever done, in that we had our first discussions, I think it was in June, around the 20th of June in 2007, and we closed the deal around the 20th of August in 2007. To decide to go forward with it in that short a period of time was a testament to the quality of the operations that we had and the relationship and trust that the 2 companies had in each other.
Like many successful mining entrepreneurs, Jim wants to share his success. He independently funds a facility called Hope Haven, an equine therapy center for children with disabilities.
And I'll tell you, if you go up there and you see some of these children and young adults who have serious disabilities, and you see them start laughing and stuff like that when they're riding on these horses, it makes you feel pretty good, I'll tell you.
Jim also supports diabetes research and PDAC's Mining Matters through the Gill Family Foundation.
The Gill Family Foundation have been major contributors over the last 5 or 6 years to PDAC Mining Matters, and we're very thankful for his continued interest in mining business and education.
Jim is still involved in the industry and is on the boards of companies like Toromont Industries, the Ontario Caterpillar dealer, and Turquoise Hill Resources, a large Mongolian copper project.
I will ask Anthony Vaccaro, Group Publisher of the Northern Miner and the Director of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame, to come to the table to present. Please.
Thank you, Pierre. Well, it's fun to have the honor to induct Jim Gill, someone that gave the Northern Miner so much great content while he was building up the Ore Resources story. You heard a lot of great stuff up on that video. There's one stat that I really like as well, and that's when 1981, when Jim started Ore Resources, he started it with one employee, Jim Gill. In 2007, when he sold to Teck Resources for $4.1 billion, as you just heard, over 2,500 employees. It's a lot of wealth creation. It's a great Canadian story. And another element to the story that's wonderful as well is that Jim actually joins his grandfather as an inductee to the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. Jim's entrepreneurial savvy, his passion for mining, and his deep belief in the societal benefit of our industry are what led him to become one of our industry's great company builders. So, and as anyone will tell you, he's just an all-around really good guy. So Jim, it's a great honor for me to present to you this induction into the Mining Hall of Fame. Jim.
Thank you, Anthony. Tonight is a very special one for me, and it is a great honor to have been selected for induction into the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame, joining many great contributors to our mineral resource business, including, as Anthony mentioned, my grandfather, who was inducted in 2003. I would first like to say congratulations to my fellow inductees this year. Your important contributions to our industry are clear, and your induction is very well deserved. My sincere thanks to the board of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame for considering me a worthy candidate. I would also like to thank the Northern Miner Press, my very longtime friend John Heslop, who put forward my nomination, and the many leaders in the mining industry who supported it. Thank you all for your business associations and your friendships over the years. Of course, it is the team of people which makes success possible, and I had the privilege of working with many skilled professionals over 26 years at OR. Without their important contributions to its business strategy and implementation, OR's success would not have been possible. To Leo Thibodeau, my original partner, who provided much of the capital to start OR, I will be eternally grateful. There were many people who helped OR over the years. In fact, as mentioned, by 2007, there were about 2,500 members of the team here in Canada and in Chile. The discovery of 8 mineral deposits, the construction and operation of 4 gold mines, 2 polymetallic base metal mines, and 2 open-pit copper mines is a testament to the hard work of the OR team. Howard Stockford, OR's second team member, Peter McCarter, Ed Stewart, Don Bubar, Ron Gagel, David Libby, Ed Gamares, David Brace, and Britt Reed were all long-term members of the team who made major contributions to OR's success, along with Kathy Robinson, my executive assistant for over 15 years, who kept me on the straight and narrow most of the time. Finding ore bodies is great, but you also need financing, and in many cases partners, to develop them and make a real return on your invested capital. In OR's case, we were supported by partners like Teck and CMP, and received financial support from David Scott at CIBC, Barclays Bank, Bank of Montreal, Deutsche Bank, ABN AMRO, and others. My thanks to all of them for their support. I believe that OR delivered the goods for our partners, our lenders, and our shareholders over the years. On a more personal note, I would like to thank my grandfather for spurring my interest in geology and mining, my father for teaching me self-discipline and the importance of ethics, and my sons Graham and Trevor and their mother Darren for putting up with my long working days and travel schedule over many years. Without their support, OR could not have been successful. I would also like to thank my wife Nancy for encouraging my vision for OR and to listening to my endless babbling on about geological and mining-related activities. My heartfelt thanks to all of you. I would like to leave you this evening with two thoughts. Firstly, the mining world today is being severely challenged by individuals and groups who believe that this industry is a major contributor to destroying our planet. As an industry, I believe that we do not do a good enough job educating the general public as to the benefits we provide to society as a whole. It seems that many people do not realize that without mining there would be no electricity, cars, internet, heating, phones, TV, airplanes, and the list goes on. We need a greater focus on making the general public aware of the major contribution our industry makes to the global standard of living. This must include education, beginning at an early age, and I strongly encourage each of you to contribute to the PDAC Mining Matters programs for student education. Mining does matter, and we better make our case strongly if we wish our great industry to survive. Lastly, when I started OR, the objective was to build a real company from scratch. It was hard work, and it required a combination of persistence, team building, good financial management, and of course, some good luck. For example, in the early days, we had a gold property in Val-d'Or called Oronata, which we believed had the potential to host a new gold deposit. After much drilling, shaft sinking, and underground exploration work, we determined that the deposit was not of ore grade. It was not until some time later, when we were active in Chile, that I realized that Oronata meant no ore in Spanish. A lesson well learned. Fortunately, persistence led to new discoveries which became profitable mines. For those of you who have the urge to build your own company and are prepared to take reasoned chances and be persistent, I encourage you to give it a try. We need entrepreneurs like you in this industry. Always remember that dreams can and do come true. Thank you all very much for the great honor you have given to me this evening. I will never forget it.
Well, Jim, you are absolutely correct. And the way I put it about our industry is very simple. Without copper, our civilization would not exist today, plain and simple. And it's just going to get even more so as we electrify the entire world. So you're absolutely correct, and I totally agree with you. Now, the formal part of the evening is over, but before you run anywhere, I do have to tell you something a little bit personal. You see, tonight is my last appearance here as your Master of Ceremonies, as I have decided to join the Time's Up movement. If you can't beat them, join them. So it's been a privilege and an honor to be your Master of Ceremonies for the past 18 years, as we've inducted over 100 men and women, legends to the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. I want to thank you all for year after year, coming here, showing up, of your support for this great event. I always knew I could count on you. I could count on you to be forgiving, supportive, and above all, just plain fun. And in the true tradition of the one-year-old Time's Up movement, I will leave you in the hands of a much younger, brighter, and gender-neutral Master of Ceremony in the person of Anthony Vaccaro. Anthony, please join me to the podium and tell these good folks why they should be back next year.
Well, because gender neutral is in vogue. That's it right there. I think that's a compliment nowadays, so thank you.
I mean, we're both in touch with our other side, right?
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. We're comfortable. Well, after that nice compliment to me, allow me to return the favor, Pierre. Let me say, and I know that we all kind of have a similar feeling here tonight on hearing that news. It's not always the case that we encounter success and humility and that they go hand in hand together. Or that keen insight and an incredible sense of humor find a home in the same individual. And even rarer is it that when someone reaches lofty heights in their career, that they remain ever approachable and completely down to earth. So when that mix of qualities is present in a single individual, I think as an industry, we're all very blessed to have such a leader and such a representative. So Pierre, your humor, your insight, but also your energy, the class that you bring, this is all what has made this event the can't miss event on the calendar year for the mining industry. And on behalf of the thousands of people that have attended over the last 18 years here, I mean, there aren't the words to fully express our gratitude, but we say thank you. We say thank you for your dedication, for your time. Thank you for sharing your take on what's happening in our industry and being our zeitgeist. Thank you for your awesome one-liners that we are classic and have burned a few people, but they're laughing while they're burned. So on behalf of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame, it is my distinct privilege and honor to present you with a small token of our appreciation. But I do hope that before I present it, you will let me know where I can get the golden tuxedo. Because I would like to look nice for the 50 or so people that still show up next year, so that's the plan anyway. Pierre, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Oh, that's fabulous. Thank you.
The gold
Thank you
standard
very
for
much.
the MCs. Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's great. Fantastic job. Fantastic job.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. I'm just going to grab my sheet here. Thank you so much. You can please sit down. I have 2 more minutes. And the bar is open. That's really the most important thing I wanted to tell you. For another half hour or so, please top up your glass, reunite with friends if you want, and think about the nomination for next year for the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. We need more women, so if you can think of a few good names that are old enough, I mean, they have to be 65, I know, but, you know, you're going to get there someday. Don't hope too fast. And with that, I wish you all a good night, and may all your pain be champagne. Good night.